Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, one is star. Bang dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. It is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. Cars broke down, I missed the bus, there runs a 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right on the jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just a perfect day. It's just a perfect day. Na, 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 na,
Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of Eggs. This week we have special guest Chris Tabish. Chris is a Silicon Valley business professional and an active stand-up comedian, author of the book Comediology, which is all about how to be more effective and fulfilled in business by using comedy. He is also the co-founder of Venture West, a consulting company in Silicon Valley whose mission is to organize or help organizations create meaningful strategies and help bring them to reality. Venture West has worked with and helped many Fortune 500 companies like Kaiser Permanente, Cisco Systems, Veritas Software, Pete's Coffee, and more. Here to join us, live and direct here in the house, is our new friend Chris Tabish.
In the house.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, for people who've been listening to the show but maybe not paying close attention, we ended up moving out of our office downtown. So we're doing a couple shows just here out of the house while we get relocated. And so Chris was kind enough to actually A, be in town for one, and B, come over to my place to do the show. So.
Yeah, and trusting enough, it's like, hey, come to the basement.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you brought your wallet, right? I mean, no reason. I'm just asking.
So as soon as I chew through the ropes and we finish recording, can I go with?
Yeah, if you can get out, you're free to go. That's the rule we have here. We may be creepy, but we do have standards. So Chris, well, first of all, why are you in Salt Lake? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm originally from Salt Lake, and a couple of things. My buddy is having his 50th birthday party. And I also did a stand-up. I had a stand-up gig last night.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Crap! I wish I'd have known. I'd come down at Wise Guys or something.
It was actually at the. It used to be called Lumpy's. It's a.
Oh yeah.
It's
right
that hatchet throwing thing, right?
Next to Sky.
Yeah, it's like 13 Thieves or Highland Drive. Yeah, it's right. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So they're starting shows in their basement. I like basements apparently.
Yeah, clearly. God, this is becoming a thing.
Yeah, right. Comediology and basements. Anyway, so we had a show. It was a really good time, and next time I'm out, I'll definitely let you know.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, of course. God, we'd love to come support you. And also, we have some connections and past guests and stuff that are comedians that work the circuit around here, and maybe we can put you in touch with the right people to get you in different places or whatever you need. So,
love it.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
Feel free to
Thank
give
you.
us a shout. So cool. Well, so you come from this really diverse background. I think the stuff that we're most interested in actually is this comediology, because I think it's really interesting to try and, I guess, view business through this comedic lens, which I think is pretty innovative. But let's maybe start a little bit with some of your background and just sort of, get caught up to speed. How'd we get here?
Yeah, I think, you mentioned comediology, and I think it's born from my background. I grew up in Salt Lake. I was educated in Salt Lake. I went to Silicon Valley, where I worked with large Fortune 500 companies. And, after so many years of working with these companies, you kind of feel like a stormtrooper. You don't really know why you're doing things, except somewhere in a back room, the evil, emperor said, "You must destroy these children and babies." Okay, well, it's like, I mean, you can only do so much of that.
No, I totally relate. I'm working on a health insurance company right now. I can understand this. So.
Yeah, and it's I think the old school, the old world is, people don't really need to know why they're doing something. They just need to do it, and they need to do it yesterday, or we're going to take them out of the coal mine. And we've kind of gotten past that. And so that was my life for a long time. It's funny, I still do the same thing. I still do in a consulting capacity, but it's transforming businesses. It might be implementing a computer system. It might be taking a process and re-engineering it. It might be helping to train people on a new system. It's doing the same thing, but it's doing it because I like to help people. I like to bring people joy. And that's kind of the fundamental aspect of comediology is, really looking inward to what is it that you want to do in this world? Not necessarily what, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and that makes sense. I mean, there's such a dichotomy in business, right? Because you've got your stuffy dudes in the suits and, sort of this old vision of what business used to be. And then now you have this alternative view that's the Mark Zuckerbergs and stuff like that, running around in their khakis and flip-flops. And so, but somewhere in the middle, I think lies this balance between expertise and understanding of business, but also this ability to share it and teach it. And I think that's where I think comediology is really strong. Is everybody likes to laugh, everybody enjoys having a a more positive discussion or a more entertaining discussion about this stuff. And if you have to sit and I don't know listen to dissertations all day, like it's not going to work for you. It seems like taking a comedic approach could be a really strong way to teach this type of subject matter.
Yeah, and you nailed it. It's the balance. And when you think about how, at least I used to go about business. Let's just say if somebody said, "Hey, I need an opinion on some sort of write up or some sort of what's happening in the industry." Well, I think the natural people lean to, "Oh, I need to look outside myself. I need to look at a Gartner report. I need to figure out what's going on in the industry, or I need to look at this microphone and see if it's working for me."
Yeah.
It's outside of yourself. And comedy, the cool thing about comedy is that it forces you to look inside yourself. It's like, if somebody tells you a joke, you don't need to look at the person next to you to say, "Well, is that funny?"
Yeah.
It comes from inside. And so that's that transforming of business. Like you've got something inside of you that you can, in addition to listening to the external factors, but you've got something inside to contribute.
Yeah, no, and I think that that's a really good point because there is this, I mean, of course, we're sort of conditioned to, look to a boss or look to a manager or somebody for some kind of, leadership or guidance on different things, and there's probably a place for that. But again, if balance is going to be sort of our key word, there's also this internal trust or this internal mechanism. A lot of people just call it gut, but there's this thing where we sometimes don't trust ourselves or we don't sort of believe in a whatever our thoughts are, or we're not sure, or we have a little trepidation, whatever. But with comedy, to your point, like it just bursts out of you, like there's no stopping. It's totally third eye lizard brain stuff. Like, I mean, whatever it is, it hits that funny bone, and you don't have to ask around, you don't have to think about it. Well, I guess unless you don't get the joke.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, you'll have this sort of guttural or this quick reaction to it. And I think in business, a lot of times we have that same reaction to a situation or a scenario or something, but we don't act on it, either because we don't trust ourselves or because we have been conditioned to look to somebody else to make the answers instead of looking internally. So I think I think that's a really astute observation, this idea how comedy relates to business.
Yeah, and I'm glad I copied it off the kid next to me. So that's, but I think you're right. I think there is this, if you're present enough, I think a lot of times what happens too is we're thinking about what to say next, or we're thinking about what we did in the past, and they're thinking about me this way or that way, instead of just on a comedy stage, you have to be present. I guarantee if you're thinking about your next joke, or you're thinking about your last joke that bombed, you are not going to, the present moment is not going to be a good one.
Right.
If you're just present, even acknowledging like, "Whoa, I muffed up that joke," it frees people, it enlightens people to dance in the present moment. And that is, and then to your point about being able to see the comedy, to recognize the comedy, that's what comedy forces you to do, to be present, to be authentic, to like, well, I guess I am sort of being a knucklehead or whatever it is.
Yeah, there's a certain honesty in comedy, and I think comics. I listen to a lot of the Joe Rogans of the world and stuff like that, and so I feel like I've got a little peek behind the veil of what comics do when they're hanging out at the club and stuff. And I think that they maybe sort of think of themselves as being unique in this space where they're free to be totally open and totally honest with one another. And I think you see people trying to bring that kind of characteristic into business, under the guise of like radical candor or things like this. But I think, sometimes they just don't get it, right? Like, I mean, being so honest that you're not being productive, or that you're not being helpful, or you're, hurting feelings or being abrasive, isn't being just open and honest and having a clear dialogue about things. There's a different type of trust there, I think.
There is, yeah. And I think that's a really good point you're bringing up. I think that comedy comes in flavors, and we've seen them, Andrew Dice Clay, right?
Sure.
Funny comedian, but didn't last very long, right? A lot of times it's in your face. And actually, I think he's funny, but look at the people who really are long lasting and made an impression on society more so, like Robin Williams. Even Joe Rogan, like he looks at himself. It's the self-deprecation. It's the intention to say, hey, I'm not perfect. Oh my gosh, this is a wreck. People love that. People, once you're open and like, I'm vulnerable and I'm human, then the other person is willing to say, well, I'm human too. Let's have some fun together, and let's build a trusting relationship that we can produce out of.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the key word, or the operative word there, is vulnerability, right? I mean, something about vulnerability is attractive, whether it's in business or whatever. But I guess people sometimes get caught up in this sort of, trying to look virtuous or trying to be on a pedestal above somebody else, whether it's in, physical structure and management systems or something like that, where you are third or fourth or fifth or 100th in the pecking order. Or if it's just sort of even among friends, who has the nicest car, who has the best job, who has the, hottest wife, whatever it is, but there's sort of these pecking orders that we have. And I think opening yourself up and being vulnerable sort of levels the field, right? All of a sudden, whatever insecurities you have, I've got those too. Like, we're all cool, and it's not me being better than you or me handling it differently than you. It's that I'm open and honest about it. So you don't need to be concerned. Like, we're cool. And I think that as a manager, that does a really good job of sort of, opening the door and allowing trust between the people that you're leading and the people who are following, and sort of puts everybody in the same room, or makes it easier to have those conversations anyway.
Yeah. And the other thing about comedy, as you talk about the competition of it, is it the pecking order? And I used to really to buy into that. Like, am I, what does my, employee eval say? Am I in the top 10%? And I used to really get down on myself, both in comedy and in business. If I didn't make the people laugh the most, if I wasn't in the top ranked, then you peel back the layers of the onion and you realize, let's just go back to comedy. I mean, you mentioned Joe Rogan. Let's compare him to Robin Williams, compare him to Sam Kinison. It's all under the label of comedy, but these guys are so vastly different. I mean, Sam Kinison and Robin Williams, very different style. What they do is, yes, it's both called comedy, but if you were to describe it.
Oh my God, you could barely have them both in the same room together.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so it's the same thing in business, that maybe we're both called project managers, or maybe we're both called accountants, whatever it is. And you tend to compete because we're called the same and there's only so many limited resources. But that's where we get the plot wrong, because inside of us, we have things that are so different. Clearly, you could set up a studio much better than I mean, the mechanics and the technicality that you've even just brought to this game is much more than I can do. We're both on a podcast, but we're not competing. I bring something different, you bring something different. Let's figure out what that is and work together.
Mike's background's in audio engineering, and if you saw my cable management, you'd have a stroke. So we're doing okay, but we definitely have a lot of wadded up cables behind the scenes.
Yeah, is this dog chewing on it? Is that supposed to be that way?
It's okay. I think that one's mine.
Actually, how about I get a word in?
No way, man. I thought you were sick. I thought you weren't talking.
I'm trying to wait, but there's no pause, so I can't get any time in.
Mike, I was just about to compliment you on see, he's such a great listener.
Yeah,
that's what he no, but
well, hold on before you say it, because maybe I was going to say what you were going to say.
Okay, go right ahead.
Is I just wanted to maybe step backwards and talk about how you decided to get into comedy. My dear friend Mike here has not done it, but has mentioned or had an interest in getting into comedy for, a number of different reasons, and he can explain his motivations. But I wonder just about even making the decision to get into comedy. Like, how does that get started? And Mike, go ahead and elaborate or add to before he answers.
Well, that was my question. Thanks for saying it for me, Ryan.
Yes. See, we know each other well.
You guys have been working together a really long time,
right?
And I want to come to the anniversary party. I mean, it's much cheaper than therapy. I'll start there. I mean, literally, I was miserable at work being a stormtrooper, and I needed some levity in my life. And it got to the point where I really did. I considered therapy, and I was like, okay, so you can call the HR at your work and talk to somebody. Well, one, you have to pay them. Two, it's through the company, and three, they have your employee ID. So that's versus I could talk to a room full of 20 people, Nobody knows who I am, and we laugh about it. And it's amazing how I really did start because it was therapeutic. I mean, I always loved comedy. I wanted to do it, but I didn't really have the audacity to stand in front of people, especially when I was in the corporate light. Like, who am I to get up and be a comic? I'm a serious corporate guy. And so it came out of desperation. It was just, I need some levity. I need to have some fun. I had 3 kids, very stressful, you know, and you know how it is. I mean, are you guys married? Have kids?
I am, yeah, and I've got a couple boys. So.
Okay. So, you know, you turn into a function, right? You're either an employee or a father, or if you're lucky, a husband every 3 weeks or so, you know,
Right.
but I had to get out and do something. It started out of desperation. I didn't have this big plan to write a book and incorporate it in a comedy. It was just to have fun.
Yeah.
So what was your first gig like, as far as like trying to come up with the material and then actually going on stage and trying to feel it out and see how it goes? Can you just kind of go down that road?
Yeah. If do you guys have any pain medication?
I'm sure we can find something around here. I think I've got a beer back in the fridge. We'll bring it down a little bit.
If I could describe it in one word or a hyphenated word, I would say it was god awful.
Yeah.
And the reason it was god awful is because I always, you know, you look at a comic performing, and I thought, hey, it's that person has memorized a lot of material, and now they're regurgitating it on stage. That's what it's about. You got to memorize and you got to spill it on stage. So that's what I did. I wrote down a lot of material and I got up on stage and I just, okay, here's the guy. And when you're on stage, you're nervous, the lights are down, you tend to talk fast, and it's miserable if you approach it that way. And I call that approaching it from the what. I'm going to deliver you some material. This is the what I'm going to deliver. After about, I mean, it's embarrassing. After about a year of doing this, my co-author, Curtis Matthews, he's done a lot in comedy. He has his own TV show, very, very gifted in comedy. He's like, why are you doing this? Which, by the way, is not a confidence boosting question.
Well, what's worse is when you don't have an answer for it.
Yeah,
When it's like, well,
exactly.
I don't know. I thought I was supposed to be doing this.
And I said, I'm doing it because I want to connect with people and have fun. And he said, well, why aren't you doing that? Which again, not confidence boosting. The next time I got on stage, I said, I'm going to connect with people and have fun. And the funny thing about that was, even before I got to the club, when I got to the club, I was like having fun. I was meeting people. I was shaking hands. Even if they had nothing to do with the show, I was sitting in the front row, like cheering on the other comedians, where before I was like, okay, I mustn't forget how to punch this line. I was just being myself and having fun. I got up on stage and I told the same joke I told 100 times before. But even before I told the joke, I was looking around, smiling, curious about people. They laughed. The second joke I completely botched. And then I said, whoa, I sort of botched that one. People laughed because I was there to connect. I knew why I was there. And that was sort of the transformation point where it became less of the road to hell and more like, hey, I can actually connect with people through joy.
Well, and I think it's important to get that feedback, especially as early as you can, but understanding you will probably eat crap for a little while. Yeah. But I think getting that sort of positive feedback and having people resonate with what you're trying to do is, the thing that keeps you coming back. And I think you did the right thing in that you set an intention, right? You basically made a conscious decision that I'm not going to walk up on stage and push this out onto an audience. Rather, this audience and I are going to do this together. Like, this is a thing we're going to engage with together. And I think that having that intention and coming to it from that spot, I mean, like, I'm not a particularly spiritual guy or anything, but like, there's like a radiance or a buzz or maybe it's just body language or something that humans pick up on, right? And again, it goes back to this vulnerability we were talking about. But I think that being up there, being vulnerable, having positive intentions from the jump, all those things contribute to that, and people can feel it. People know.
Yeah, right. And that's a great point in, again, taking that platform of comedy and bringing it to the business world, because, you're just doing stuff because somebody gave you a what? Hey, you got to implement this technology. You got to do this deliverable. And people can read body language. I don't want to be here. I had to get up early. I missed, Hotel Balderdash, whatever. I mean, and people can sense that. Especially this day and age. I don't know what's happening, but I don't know if you guys notice this, but more so when I grew up. You could have an angry attitude towards somebody, it feels like 20 years ago, and people would be like, whatever, he's normal. Now people are really in tune with that. And so when you go to work, when you are working on a project, if you are bitter, if you don't bring the joy, if you don't bring that connection, people can spot that, and it impacts your day. They're going to react to you the same way. And
Well, I'm sure it actually impacts a lot of people's days, because if you're that one person that's happy and excited and the funny guy and everyone likes, you're going to kind of just spread that warmth, and the people who are angry and pissed off and don't want to be there might enjoy actually being at work that day, which is huge, I'm sure.
yeah, Mike, it's a great point, and it's actually been proven that people who who are funny, and not necessarily stand-up comedians, but who are funny, who bring the joy at work, they have people that are more want to affiliate with them. They get paid more. They move up the ladder quicker. They did this study where they had these people in this booth watching videos, and some videos, they just were different clips. Like some were funny, some were not funny, and then they patched in people who were watching the video with them just on video, and they would have different people watching. Some people would laugh at when they laughed, some people didn't. And at the end they said, well, all right, of those people who watched the video with you, which ones did you like? And they're like, undoubtedly the people that laughed with them, they think the same way I do. We have the same affiliation. I want to be affiliated with them. They're just great people. Well, it turns out they weren't even real live people. They were just playbacks of videos. But that's the power that comedy has.
Yeah.
It's like it's just a boost. It's that fiber that connects us. It's something humanistic about it.
Yeah, and I think it's that sort of tribal thing, right? I mean, like we're all looking for people or groups or whatever to sort of belong to, right? And so if you can just sort of quickly glance at somebody who laughed at the same joke you did, you might be able to make some judgment calls about sensibilities, or you may be able to say, okay, well, that person and I have this in common. We sort of think this kind of thing's funny or whatever. And so I think that in terms of building a tribe or in terms of developing relationships, like these might be really low level boxes to check, but nonetheless, you're now more qualified than the guy that didn't laugh, because he and I clearly don't have the same sense of humor, but you and I do. So check that box. Now we'll move on to the next step in developing a relationship. But nonetheless, this ability to see how people behave and how they act, and be able to sort of relate or not relate, I think is what the whole thing really is. It's all these relationships are just block building. And, the more of those little blocks we can add, the better, or further along that relationship will go.
Yeah, Ryan, and I like the way that you said that, low level boxes, because people often, because of that, people dismiss it. And like, it's comedy. How can you use that in an office environment? But if you think about it from you could define the game in many ways. A lot of people might define it in terms of, hey, we're all here to move up the hierarchy and make the most money. He who dies with the most toys wins, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, we are connected. We are a connected human phenomena, right? And there's certain things that connect us, certain human things, and like we talked about, it's comedy, it's art, it's sports. There are a few things that we just they're like guttural and we just connect. But once you have that connection, once you can build that connection with other people, boy, what a force, because nobody does anything by themselves. They need that connection. And like I said, you just kind of take it for, we laughed at the same thing. But the next time I want to go and I want to trust somebody with my idea and get some momentum or need some help, or have my friend pick up a battery and deliver it to me. Sorry, I don't know if we recorded that. No, Ryan got stuck in the middle of nowhere. Mike came and delivered a battery, and I bet you guys laughed a lot.
I think there's an episode where we went pretty hard on BMW.
Okay.
So I think we've had that discussion.
So, Chris, can you tell us about the process of writing the book, what it was like working with Curtis, how far into your comedian career before you actually started writing it? Because if you only started writing it a year out, and I don't know if you're that credible.
Yeah. Yeah, me and Sylvester Stallone, 3 days into it. Yeah, it's, Mike, it's a great question. And one of the things I want to talk to is something I learned from comedy and writing this book. When you first write your material for comedy, the first time you put it on paper, it's like, you think it's great for 5 minutes, and then you're like, oh, and then you get up on stage or whatever and you review it and you're like, this isn't very good. And so one of the things I really want to convey, I went through this process, and I would suggest for other people, it's a 401k. I call it a creative 401k. So if you think of a financial 401k, the first time, you put in money each paycheck, you're going to save for the future. The first time you put it in, it's like $3.62. You're like, this is pointless, Then after a year, 5, 10, 15 years, you're like, whoa, I have thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars in here. And ultimately, it gets to the point where you can live off that 401k. You don't need to go to work anymore. Well, it's the same thing with writing and comedy. It took me 3 years to write this. The first time I wrote, I'm like, this is awful. But investing every day, I would literally wake up at 5 o'clock. I would write sometimes for like 15, 30 minutes, and then writing and rewriting and rewriting. And then all of a sudden, investing in that creative 401k, all of a sudden I have something like, wow, I could actually make a living off of this. This is, but it's that day after day turn. No one, in my experience, is born brilliant. It's this creative process of getting in touch with yourself. And kind of building on that.
No, I think it's a really great point, because I think that we're sort of conditioned by sort of Instagram and social media and things like this to have sort of this, I don't know, instant gratification thing, right? Where we see somebody, and I mean, every picture in my Instagram feed is somebody on a beach or somebody on a yacht or in their Lamborghini or whatever. Everybody's on the best day of their life. And so meanwhile, I'm getting snowed on. It's cold. I'm, having, dealing with my own struggles. And then you look at that and you go, God, well, what am I doing wrong? How come life's going this way for me? Meanwhile, these 20 somethings get to hang out on yachts all day. What's going on? And I think that we're sort of conditioned into that by just what's happening in society. And so I think it's really great to hear stories of sort of the struggle and the grind, because I mean, the more we interview people on this show, and Mike, you can jump in if you agree or don't, I guess. Feel free to agree or not agree with me.
I don't even know what you're going to say.
Feel free to say a word.
What was the question?
But the more we talk to people, the more we find that this is the truth, right? Is that nothing comes easy. And even though these are cliches that everyone's dad or mom or grandma or whomever told them, the reality is no, nothing comes easy. It all comes by way of long-term grind. And, it's, like you say, it's daily writing or very frequent writing that made you a competent writer, that made you become more in tune with the way you write comedy, for example, or the way that you put together things. Like you can't just come out the box understanding how to do everything, but you also had to stick with it long enough to get it done. Yeah. And so I think it's really important to hear those kinds of stories for our listeners, because I think that just, especially for the young entrepreneurs and people like that who listen, everybody's expecting sort of, this big moment where all of a sudden they're in the middle of this huge IPO or somebody's trying to come buy them out. And, like that doesn't happen without the grind. All we ever hear on social media is, oh, Facebook got bought for X number of billions or whatever. But, what about the last 15 years? We don't talk about that. It's, I wish I could remember who it was. Maybe it was Marcus, actually, the comedian Marcus that came on our show. He was talking about, the 10-year overnight success, he finally hit and everybody noticed or whatever, but it took 10 years of grind. Just nobody sees that stuff. So we don't talk about that, So, and I think Instagram and these other, get, instant sort of satisfaction type platforms, even just like local news or CNN or whatever, like everything is handled in such a way that you don't see any of the preamble, you just see the end result. And I think that, for especially young people growing up who maybe haven't been grinding for 20 years, it's really difficult to understand that this really is just the way. Like there is no shortcut.
Yeah, I think there is that complete disillusion that you see something and it's an overnight success and they were just born lucky or fortunate. And I think I used to look at life as, hey, you do, like you're in school, you do what the teacher tells everybody to do the same thing. And you do. So my philosophy starting work was you do what the quote unquote man tells you to do, and you do it better than your competition. And pretty soon you'll have a Lamborghini and a mansion and all that. I think that's the illusion. At least in my experience, I haven't seen anybody get success. If you're doing things that everyone else is doing, you're not going to get any more successful than they are and any more fulfilled. And so a lot of what I talk about in Comediology is pointing the compass inward to what you really brings you joy and invest in that in the heck in that. Just keep doing it. And because a couple of things will happen. One is you love to do it, so it's fun. Even getting up at 5 a.m., I would enjoy myself as much as the pain of getting up at 5 a.m. was. And because you enjoy it, you get really good at it. And people are like, whoa, after 5 years, you are going to be so much better than the average person. And yet it never feels like work to you. Like this, talking about this is like, oh my gosh, I'd much rather be doing this and, hanging out with my best friend. Sorry, best friend. But,
Well, and I think both Mike and I can relate to that. Mike, feel free to jump in. Sorry, for people listening to the show, Mike's not in the studio with us or in the house with us today. Also, because of bandwidth issues, we don't have video. So
and he was born without a tongue. No,
right. And so we're sort of talking over him because both Chris and I are in the same room, but Mike isn't. So yeah. Mike, feel free to jump in. Sorry, and I know you're trying not to step on us, but feel free to step on us because I don't want you to be totally ruled out of the conversation.
No, it's totally fine. I'm enjoying the conversation. Continue.
So anyway,
what were you going to say?
I don't know. I took that tangent. Now I don't remember.
Yeah.
So go ahead and finish it. I know you were thinking the same thing.
I was actually, you kind of glazed over the writing process of the book. You said you would get up and spend 15 minutes and it took you quite a while to do. How was it working with your co-author and having someone like Curtis, give you insight and feedback? Did he actually contribute to the book or was he just kind of like a helper?
Oh yeah. So Curtis Matthews, just a little bit about this. This actually kind of talks to the point of using our different strengths. I'm definitely more of a steady Eddie kind of guy. Like every day at 5, I'm doing the book. So inherently that brings limits in terms of thinking outside of the box. So I know where I need to bring in a partner. So basically I finished the baseline of the book and then I went to Curtis. Now Curtis is a mad genius. The guy is just, I mean, I probably can't say things on the air that he talks about, but he'll come out like, anyway. And so what I said, hey, Curtis, we really need to punch these things up. I need to, I've got the points in there. I really want to emphasize, but I need to have some pizzazz. So he took it and he then punched up the material. So a 3-year process, he did his process in about 2 months and we collaborated quite a bit. Do you think this is funny? Is it too much, et cetera? And so it was a collaboration towards the end, but that's how we worked best together. If I were to get Curtis on a call every day, we would end up strangling each other. So,
sure.
But yeah, it's where we fit. And so I hope that answers the question, Mike.
Yeah. I'm just always curious about the creative process and how, working with other people, especially on something like a book, it's got to be really hard to kind of just come to the conclusion of the final product. I've thought about going down that road and I've actually started twice and I can never seem to get past the first chapter. I've got like a really good idea that I want to write about, but I get into it and then I get into my own head and then I never actually progress with it. Like I have the eternal writer's block.
Yeah. Well, and I think I experienced that. I know exactly what you're talking about. I literally experience that on a daily basis. So here, if I could offer you anything about writing, and in fact, this is a recommendation from comedy, and this is one thing that comedy helps in professionals. It's a process called ranting. So what you do is it's better if you write it. If you can type it, but there's magical about writing. I used to type my sets. I will write them because there's something magic that happens when you put your physical hand to a pen to paper. Anyway, what you do for 30 minutes, all you do is write, and you don't stop yourself. If it's just top of mind to the paper. The snow is white, blah, blah, blah. You don't worry about grammar. You don't worry about sentences. You don't worry about anything. You just write for 30 minutes. Somewhere between 3 days and 2 weeks, you do this on a daily basis, your filter will be removed. And you have to be real careful. Don't be around your boss very long. It's like, just ideas will flow. Like it is like some kind of legal hallucinant, drug that just frees your mind. And so that's what I did that quite a bit, just ranted. And remember this, the best advice that I got is the first edit, the first time you put it on paper, it's for you. Don't think about the audience. It's for you. Just have fun. Do what brings you joy. After that, the second time you go through it, then it's for the audience. And then you can refine and edit from there. But the first time, it's all about bringing the joy. I don't know if that helps, but that helped me. I had to go through that thought process on a regular basis.
Yeah, we've had another guest on that. He said text to speech is another good way to go, because you can kind of just talk and it writes it for you, and then you can go through and edit it out. And I've thought about trying that, but yeah.
Well, I know like in my situation, so I do a lot of writing, business writing, and then more recently, a lot of writing on remote work advocacy. And what I found, I started, I guess when did Ryan Carson come on? It was like a year and a half ago or something. We had a guy come on the show, and that was part of his daily process. Was he was getting up at 4 a.m. and writing for a little bit, and then learning a little bit, and then going to work, right? And so I tried to do something like that, and I started writing. And, you know, it was kind of a slog. I got a few articles out, and they were good and everything. I was happy with the output, but it was still just like, God, it was hard, right? It was like going through mud. More recently, just in the last 6 months, I was working with a business coach who writes a daily email blast that you get every single day. He writes this new thing every day. And he encouraged me too. He's like, you know, why don't you start writing every day? Just start, you know, putting something down every day, make it like an email, right? I unfortunately can't sit down and write anything less than 2,000 words or something. I'm too wordy. But nonetheless, what I did is, you know, I started writing. I never got to like an everyday cadence, but I got to 2 or 3 articles a week type thing. And what I found is that writing 2 or 3 articles a week is infinitely better than infinitely easier than writing 1 article a month. And so, because for me anyway, like you start to develop that habit, you start to get into mode, you know? And so, and actually I'm really frustrated right now because the last article I put out was January 3rd. And, you know, just for work purposes, I've been really tied up and haven't been able to work on writing in the last couple of weeks. And so now I'm like itching, but now when I try and sit down and write, it's like, it's that slog again. It's, you know, back through the mud. And so I think there's something too, you know, like you're saying, just sitting down every day, whether it's regimented, you know, 15 minutes at 5 a.m. every day, or if it's just, you know, make sure you squirrel out 30 minutes every day to just sit and write and contemplate things. I think that scratching that itch or getting into that mode every day, you know, will allow you to then unlock whatever it is that's keeping you from being able to write. So like in Mike's situation, you know, he sat down to do these things because he's motivated and wants to get this idea on paper. But if he was writing every day, it would become progressively easier probably versus the start and stop every 6 months kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I also, I don't know, I think different people work differently. For example, I'll write for Comediology. Comediology is a little bit more business centric than is stand-up comedy. So I'll be like, I'll write for a while, and then I get bored with too much of that. Then I'll have to go to stand-up. And so every day I'll write stand-up and do funny stuff, and it can be more irreverent and, you know, the stuff you would say after people have 3 drinks. Right. And then I'll kind of like, and I can kind of weave back and forth. That helps me as well, is to, you know, it's just, I guess it's comparable to doing a workout. Like if people like to run every day, they probably get bored with running. Okay, well, let's do something, let's do weights or whatever. But it tends, just that different thinking helps me also keep bringing it fresh and motivated.
Yeah, I think that's a nice metaphor. Just, you know, I mean, if it's arm day every day, you'll have huge arms, but they're going to look ridiculous.
Let's go play some slot machines.
Yeah, right. So, but yeah, if you never work those legs, you know, you're off balance. You're not sort of, proportional.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really good metaphor for being able to sort of jump around a little bit. And you know, Mike and I mean, Mike knows we are so diverse in the many things that we're always trying to dabble in. I mean, he and I have started hundreds of things together. And so most of them haven't amounted to much, but I mean, you know, but the point is we're very interested in very, you know, a wide number of things. And so, you know, we both just have beer bellies from it. But I think it's I mean, it's not balanced.
Speak for yourself, buddy.
But yeah, you've been trimming down a little bit.
Mike has the luxury of not being on site, so he
that's right.
I got a 6-pack.
Yeah, I'm ripped.
As far as Chris knows, he's a you know an Adonis over here.
Yeah.
So
my 6-pack's in the fridge. So
no, but I will give Mike kudos. He has been losing weight. He's been trimming down. He likes to cook, and he's an awesome cook, and so he eats awesome food.
Yeah.
So
I'm
jealous.
Hey, Mike, nothing like getting motivated. What's your book about?
Oh. I have a few different I don't know. I don't really want to go into it on here right now, but I'll go on to I'll tell you a little bit about it off air. Is that okay? I really like.
Yeah. No, I want to start the motivation, because as soon as you start to talk about it, it builds power. And hey, Mike, you were talking. I want to read more about it. You know, so
all
of a sudden,
it's up to you. I'm happy to hear about it either way.
like it's called Losing My Religion. And I want to talk about the process of me. Like I don't, it's a long story, and it's kind of personal, and I've started it 2 or 3 times, and I've got a lot written, but when I go to actually try and I think it's more just kind of like the cheap therapy getting on stage for you. It's the same thing for me.
Yeah. And it literally religion. I mean, is this, I won't mention it by name, but
yeah, it's the one you're thinking of.
Yeah.
It's in this.
I didn't know you were Buddhist, but
yeah,
yeah, it's in this neck of the woods.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think though, a nice segue to come off of that is, one of the things that, you've spent a lot of time doing, Chris, is, sort of learning to feel or learning to listen to yourself, and we've talked about this a little bit just earlier on, when you were talking about, this rat race that you were working in. And then all of a sudden you said, wait, I got to look internally. I got to look inside. And I think that, even though it seems like something we can say sort of flippantly, like, oh yeah, I decided to just kind of check myself out and, finally do what was right for me. Like, I think it takes a lot of work to get to that decision, and
Yeah.
so, and I mean, you can hear like what Mike is wrestling with, right? I mean, there's clearly like this emotional connection. He's trying to sort of work through something and, ultimately be happier on the other end of this. Right. And so, for I think a lot of people, they get caught up in this thing where they know what's good for them, but they're not willing to do it because they're either, it's a fear thing or, I don't want to call it bravery because it's not always that, but I mean, maybe it's, there's some trepidation to do it, or you're exposing yourself or putting yourself out there. And, even though it might be good for you in the end, it's still a tough choice to make. So like in your situation, you were, working your way up the C-suite, you're doing all this stuff in big corporations, totally in that world. Yet you still said, oh, I've got to figure out how to make myself happy. And what, can you talk at all about sort of what allowed you to be, I guess inward or introspective enough to actually see that now was time for me to pivot, but B, also what was it that you had built up in yourself that allowed it to happen? Like, what had you hit a wall and you were forced into it? Like in my case, I went to work for myself because I got laid off. I always wanted to. I was not brave enough to make the step, but when I got laid off, I had to, and happily ever after. But my thing was that I wasn't brave enough to have made that move on my own. I needed to be pushed off that ledge. And so I just wonder if you talk a little bit about sort of that experience, about sort of finding your inner happiness and then being willing to actually pursue it.
Yeah, I think I used to listen to conversations or books or inspirational stories and think, wow, exactly, Ryan, like they made their pivot. And I think that's wrong. I don't think it is a pivot. At least it wasn't for me and what I've observed. I think it's more like a concentric circle. Mine started out of desperation. Sounds very similar to yours did. Mine started actually with the realization, well, I was miserable at work. I came home, there was a big crack in the door. My wife had slammed, I thought the kids had, I'm like, who broke the door? And my wife was like, you're so miserable at work and I just can't take it anymore. I mean, because I was just bottled up. I wasn't, not a lot of I wasn't venting a lot. It was just built up frustration. My nephew died that year. And I came to the realization, I was making good money. I was putting money away for my kids' college education. And I thought, it makes sense what I'm doing, and it's respectable what I'm doing. I'm putting money away so my kids can go to college. And then I thought that through. So they can have the same life I'm having. Like, oh my God. Like, really, that's the best that I can do for my kids.
Huh.
And so the realization was, if I want them, because I want them to pursue their dreams, I want them to be happy. And if I want them to be happy, then I need to show them that example. Mm-hmm. So I left the company that I was at. I'd learned how to get back into consulting, but this time sell, because I never sold before. I was always doing delivery, which is a lot, I won't say easier, but it's a different skill set. Mm-hmm. For years, this was in 2009, 2010. And this is when I started doing comedy just for an escape. So for years, I thought, I want to do my own business. I want to be more comedic. But I would talk about it, and I would say next year, or this, people would be like, yeah, okay. And then next year would come and they'd be like, well, you're still doing what you're doing. And I would feel like a loser. I would feel, but in the background, I was writing comedy. In the background, I was forming a business plan. These things take time to bake. It's like putting a cake in the oven. You can't expect it. You know, you're putting these raw ingredients into you and you're transforming. It takes time and it's just that process to go through. And I wish I would have been more patient with myself to realize that, because when you don't meet that mark that you talk, like Mike, you just said, I want to create a book, and people are like, hey, where's the book? Oh, and then you think to yourself, oh, I'm a loser, I don't have to book it. No, it will come, it will transform. It just takes time, and be patient of yourself, but keep working on in the background. Then all of a sudden you have something and people are like, whoa, dude, you wrote a book, and it doesn't even reverberate inside of yourself till like 4 months later. You're like, wait a minute, I'm a published author. What's going on? But just it's a process, and it takes time, and it's a beautiful unfolding if you find and if you do something that you love.
Yeah, it's amazing how accomplished you feel after you do a big project like that. Ryan can attest to this, but I've been working on this big rock wall and landscaping project for about 4 years now, and I'm 100 feet. I've got like 50 feet left on the flagstone to do, and I'm done. And it's like that last 50 feet. It's like I've been kind of almost not working as hard, because it's like, what am I going to do next? I don't want to finish this. What I'm going to do? But
that's a great story. You love it. It brings you joy.
Yeah. And it's been funny watching Mike go through this process with this rock wall. It's kind of funny because it's a little out of left field. Has nothing to do with the work he does, has nothing to do with anything. But I think there's something real and tangible about going out and working with your hands.
Yeah.
And, building this thing and having something left. And, and the metaphor could be a book or a website or a business or a relationship with a spouse or, whatever. It could be anything. And, it goes back to this idea of building blocks, right? And in Mike's case, it's literally stone by stone, where in some businessman's sense, it might be, taking the bravery or having the bravery to quit a job, or, to continue working on your stand-up comedy, even though you got booed off the stage the first time.
Yeah.
So I think that, that relationship, I really think that Mike's rock wall project is really kind of a great metaphor for all this stuff. It's funny, like so we just bought the house that we're in right now last summer. So this is our first winter in the house. And, it was a little bit out of that. I didn't have the cash flow handy to go buy a snowblower, but I had this thought, and I ran out and I bought just a snow shovel. And my wife was like, well, you sure you don't want to just get a snowblower or something? And I was like, you know what? I have so little opportunity. I spend my whole day working behind a computer. And so I was like, I had so little opportunity to go out and do something physical that I'm kind of craving something physical. Like, I want to go out and do this thing, and it's no rock wall, but I've had to shovel the driveway 3 or 4 times this week. And, but I kind of like it. Like, it's like this thing, it's going out and putting yourself through this, I call it adversity because that's how I would describe it. But it's shoveling a stupid driveway, right? It's not that big a deal, really. It's not even that big a driveway, really. But the point I'm trying to make or whatever is that there's something to that physical labor. And in Mike's situation with this rock wall, like he says, it's been going on for a long time. And I think there is that moment where people, get most of the way done with their book, and then they look for any reason to not, publish, or they get most of the way on that new project and then look for any reason to not make themselves vulnerable and put it out there for people to judge. And so I think that, it is a really cool metaphor. It is also a very cool rock wall that he's so, yeah. but it's a great metaphor for all that.
Yeah. And go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, one of the things I really like about it is I can just, put some earplugs in and get lost in my own thoughts for 4 hours while I work. It's almost like a form of meditation for me. I can just kind of process the week and what I did, just thinking time where normally you don't have that much free time to just think. So,
yeah. I think I really love this story. I think it's indicative of the fact that, like, it was stand-up comedy for me. Like, who ever thought in a million years that stand-up comedy could help my stiff corporate situation? But I think the onus is on us to find the joy every day. I think movement's a big part of it too. Mm-hmm. But finding that joy is going to up level our game. When we're happy, when we're bringing the joy, people are attracted to us. people want to be, like as I said before, affiliated with us. We're doing what we love. We generate new ideas. And the thing, Brian, something also you said about once we're done, we don't want to put it out there. I mean, it took me 6 years to 7 years to start a business from that point of transformation. It took me 9 years to publish the book. It takes time. But one of the things about putting it out there, and this is a quote from Kobe Bryant. If you ever just go on YouTube and do Kobe Bryant motivation, it was pretty brilliant what he said. He said, I'll have a hard night. He goes, I'll go out there and I'll like just muff it. I just don't make the shots. And especially, that he recently passed, it really kind of sticks with me. Then he stops and he goes, wait a minute, get over yourself. You're not that big of a deal. He goes, because then once you get over yourself, then you can start, well, why wasn't it a good shot? How can I improve? Until you get to that place, you're stuck in a state of analyzing yourself. And I think, as the same thing with publishing a book, get over yourself. It's not about you. It's about the message that you're sending. It's about those people you're going to help. Because once you start thinking about that, then it's like, oh yeah, I'm just a catalyst. I mean, those people need that message. Sorry, Michael, go back to you, losing your religion. I might think there might be a few people in this area that might be feeling the same way. Just my guess. I don't know.
Well, I just have one of those very unique stories, that Mormon missionary comes back, becomes a concert promoter, becomes a DJ, does all this. It's like there's a lot of stuff that I've been through that's a little different than most. And I think my story would be kind of interesting. And, I've like I've said, I've started 3 or 4 times and I've got a lot written, but it's just, do I actually want to publish this, or is it just me trying to get my thoughts on paper?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And regardless, I mean, I think whether it's for you or whether you tangibly release it, my guess is that the message would probably resonate and help somebody else, which you seem like a guy who would want to do that, obviously this podcast and what you guys do.
Yeah. I think that's so true. And I mean, I understand, just the cultural and familial and other implications of some of the stuff Mike's trying to move through. So I can look at it and recognize why this isn't a snap decision, like why it's something that takes some time to work through. But I think that, whether it is journaling or whether it becomes a book or whatever, there is a lot of evidence to support that just getting stuff out of your head. And, like you mentioned earlier, the putting hand to paper, something about that step of almost, you use the term magic, but I mean, it's almost as if you're literally pulling it from your brain and putting it on that piece of paper. It's like giving yourself permission to move on. Yeah. And so I think it's a really strong thing. So whether Mike ends up with a published book or just a great journal, or just, a series of thoughts, I mean, nonetheless, I think it's all super valuable. And, it's something that helps people move forward. And of course, the version of this that scales up and really?
Slasher, come on, buddy.
I got something to say too. Wow. Guys, that's pretty impressive. There are 2 dogs here. Mike isn't in the studio and he could recognize the bark from the specific dog.
Yeah. Stinking animals. The problem. Last time me and Mike did one of these from the house, they were going in and out the dog door like crazy. Now they've decided to wrestle. So, but we think it adds a level of authenticity. We're opening ourselves up and bringing people right into the house. So, well, no, I think that there's some really good things that we've covered, and we're starting to get to the end of this. But I think maybe if we can talk just a little bit more about, I guess, sort of this trust, or this. I guess it is like a trust in self, this willingness to go out and do these things. I mean, I think we've stumbled across this idea or this pain point that people run into, whether it's in business or it's in your book or wherever, where you get near the end and then you don't want to finish up. You don't want to wrap this up. And I think, some of it could be insecurity. Some of it could be, just you not.
You calling me insecure?
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting he's here.
He only does that when you're outside, by the way, Mike.
No, but I wonder if you had any thoughts about sort of rounding that corner. How do we round third and get home?
Yeah, I quote this in the book, and I would love. Sorry, I'm stalling for time because I'm trying to get this exact quote that really resonated with me. It's from Marianne Williamson. it's funny. She actually, I quoted her in the book, and I asked her. So Marianne Williamson actually was a presidential candidate, but I didn't know she. I mean, this was like a few years ago when I wrote the book. I had no idea she was going to be a presidential candidate. I just really liked this quote, and I asked her, and she's like, "Yeah, here's the quote. Use it, whatever." And then all of a sudden, she's like presidential candidate. But it never ceases to amaze me how much people want to help you when they sense your passion and sincerity. I just want to shout out. I thought that was pretty cool. This quote right here really struck me deeply, and it's all about how turning the corner. So maybe you guys have heard this. I don't know if anyone's quoted. I hope this isn't too campy. But
No. I think this is great.
So it says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light and not our darkness that most frightens us. We ask, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." And listening to that, it's like, oh my God, like, again, where the message it isn't for me. It isn't so I can be famous and make a lot of money. It's people are feeling as trapped and insecure and just beaten down and miserable as I was. And I have an opportunity to do something. And that you talk about, whoa, that's some pressure, but in a positive way. I want to liberate others as I've been liberated. That's what helped me turn the corner. And it wasn't a day thing. It was a process, but just believing in that I could actually help others through what I was going through.
Nice. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to get any better than that out of this group of guys.
Right.
So maybe we'll call it a wrap on that, mic drop moment. Not you, Mike, the other Mike.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's really important thought, because I think that is one of the things that people get hung up on, and not to go full circle on my theories about Instagram and stuff, but I mean, it's, this insecurity that, how come that person gets this and I don't, or how, like there's this comparison that's going on where you're busy trying to, I want that life. How come they've got it and I don't? And therefore, if I don't have it, mine is worse. And so somehow, you get stuck in moments where you're just not satisfied with the life you're living, or you're not, working on making things better because, it's a foregone conclusion that it can't be better.
Right.
And so this idea, that you can't really grab life by the horns and do whatever you want with it is, sort of pervasive in people. And I think it's really important that they understand that no, you can't do what you want. And I get it. Maybe some people in third world nations or whatever, I mean, but we're pretty blessed in this country where just about anybody can pull themselves up in any myriad of ways. And so I think it's, a really good thing to go out on this quote. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. And it's such a joy to be here with you guys. I mean, my hometown, Salt Lake, I've done a lot of podcasts, never one in my hometown. And so I'm really honored to be here. You guys have been so great.
That's great. Well, yeah, maybe next time you're through and if you've got a show here in town or whatever, you're just coming through. Let's do it again when Mike's not ill and he can be here in person. So he can get a word in edgewise.
Wish I could have been there to actually shake your hand.
Yeah, not today. Sorry, Mike.
But if it'll make you feel better, just put in the Zoom chat, just put like a little handshake emoji.
A little emoji. Boom.
And we'll know what you mean. So cool. Well,
no, I'll definitely love to meet you guys, Mike, in person, and have you guys for a comedy show when I'm in town.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah, we'd love it. So once again, our guest was Chris Tabish. Chris, why don't you tell people where they can find out more about you, the book, your consulting practice, etc.
Absolutely. So you can find me on Comediology.com. The book is on Amazon. It's on Audible. And just reach out to me. I'm pretty responsive. Love to hear from listeners. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So look forward to hearing from you guys. Any feedback you have, always appreciate it. That's awesome.
Well, and thanks to everybody who's tuned into the live stream and the people who listen to this all the time. We're really grateful for that. And, feel free to share the good word, let people know about the show. if you enjoyed this show and you're interested in participating in future shows, feel free to shoot us messages or questions or names of people you'd like to have on the show, and we're happy to explore those things for you. So we're trying to build a community around here, and can't do it by ourselves. So
Hey, am I getting paid for this?
yeah, that note that I gave you about not mentioning that. So cool. Well, thanks again to everybody who's tuned in. Thanks so much, Chris, for doing the show. Mike, get feeling better, and we'll do it again sometime.
All right. See you guys later.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks,
See you
Mike.
next week.
Bye.